Now let's quickly move on to another insightful session, which is on building right and raising smart. Investors guide for founders to build, scale, and secure investment successfully. And the speaker for the session is Mr. Vikram Chachra, founding partner, 8i Ventures. Let's give a round of applause and welcome him here on stage, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vikram Chachra, sir. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Thank you. Great to see you all. Amazing panel before mine, and a lot of friends here. So I know I'm competing against your lunch, so I'm going to try to make it worthwhile. How many founders here today? Okay, so I see 1, 2, 3, 4. How many folks who want to be founders? Okay, not too many. So my goal today is essentially to sort of give you a rough guide how to launch your startup, your fintech, get it going, get it funded, and the most no-brainer things you can do to get there. And some of the advice I will give you may seem contrarian to what you've heard, or as you meet other investors, the feedback that you get. And I'm going to give you some live cases with companies that we've seeded, which have gone on to do very well. One of them was actually M2P, where we were the first VC in their seed round. So I'm glad to be following up with Madhu's conversation here as well. So I am the founding partner of an early stage VC fund. Called 8i Ventures. It's a fintech-oriented VC fund. I'm very happy to say that we have emerged over the last few years as the top VC fund in India by way of performance. Preqin has ranked us amongst the top 10 micro VCs in the world 2 years in a row. And obviously our success is attributed to the founders we have backed. Our first fund was very small, less than 100 crores, 97 crores, about 13 million. The companies we backed have gone on to raise more than $600 million. And there's already one unicorn. There's Sunicorn, which is M2P, and there's a third one called LeaseBuzz, which will also go at $1 billion IPO. So what did we see? What are these people doing right? And I can tell you right up front, none of them were VC darlings. Not a single one of them. But all of them were customer darlings, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, very often a founder, when they start, they identify a problem statement, something they think it is worth solving, and they can't sleep till they do something about it. They feel this is a problem that needs to be solved. And that's kind of product thinking. So you start with a product problem, but when you go to pitch to your investors, what starts to happen is they start to look at it from a business lens. And there is a whole question about how large is your TAM. Has anybody ever heard that? Has anybody pitched to VCs? Have you got pushback on TAM? Forget about TAM. Forget about anything anybody tells you at seed stage about TAM. It is completely and absolutely irrelevant. Okay? What matters is the severity of the pain point that you are trying to remove. And I will walk you through this. In fact, if anybody walks into my office and starts with saying, I have a $100 billion TAM, I will finish that meeting in 120 seconds. 90 seconds of escorting them back to the elevator. And I will tell you why we would do that. Because customer doesn't care about TAM, right? Now, I heard this statement in America when I was a founder 20 years ago in the US. And this was in the middle of the dot-com bust. And I remember talking to a very accomplished founder who said, the US digital economy is so deep that in the future, every friction point will become $1 billion opportunity. And I think in today, particularly in fintech, every single friction point is $1 billion opportunity. And we will walk through this. So if it's $1 billion opportunity, the VCs should not mind, right, backing you. So let's take the example of a company, I think, wait a minute. I think I've flipped a little bit ahead. Can somebody help me here? I want to go back all the way. Oh, okay, great. I think you got to just, this is not the back. This is not the back. Can you just bring you back to the slide? So I'm going to talk about 3 companies. One of them is Slice, India's first digital bank. They just got the RBI license to become the first fintech to receive an RBI license to become a bank. Second one we'll talk about is M2P. And the third one is a company called LeaseBuzz. Each of these companies have scaled tremendously, and none of them was a VC darling on day 0. In fact, I can tell you all 3 of them probably got rejected by 100 different VCs, right? And each of them started by attacking a very, very specific TAM. Slice. I remember meeting Rajan in 2017, and he was 24 years old. And his inspiration was to launch Slice Pay. He wanted a credit card to buy a smartphone for his mother with his first salary. So he's one month into Flipkart, he couldn't get a credit card. And so he borrowed a friend's credit card, and that inspired him to start solving for credit problems for Gen Z. And about a year later, after pivoting, he decided to launch some kind of a card. So he attacked the student segment, the most underserved. So the big use case was financing smartphones. And what was really interesting was the way he went about solving and how well he did it. Do you want to just reboot it, because I want to show something here? So obviously, you go to a typical VC and you say, hey, I'm going to help all these college students get credit, because this is, remember, 2017, consumer unsecured credit is not so prevalent. They think you're insane. So this is what he told me. College students in India are deprived. They need credit through college. But what was really interesting was, as he went about building this product, the customers who were starting to use Slice Credit started to use for 60% of their consumer spends. The business growth was 30% a month. His NPAs were 1%, better than SBI cards. And he was underwriting people who had no credit history. He used a very different way to underwrite them. He was using college scores to begin with. He said, if you're smart enough to, and you're patient enough to postpone having fun during high school, you're not dumb enough to ruin your credit for 10,000 rupees, right? And then he had other mechanisms that he was doing. I thought he was very interesting. I remember at the end of my meeting with him, I said, I will invest. At that time, I was an angel. And before I left, I asked him, I said, what if somebody gave you $100 million? What would you do with it? He said, Vikram, I would build a bank, a digital bank, because the banks do not understand my generation. We do not want to step into a branch. We want everything digital. And I thought to myself, I said, it's nice to be naive and young. In fact, I wrote a note on the whole investment. And I said, and I actually still have that note where I said, he will need the patience of a sage to build a bank, to deal with a regulator and people twice his age. I'm very happy to say last October we merged and we became a bank. Mark this company. This company is going to probably become as large as Zomato in India. That is the reality. The category winner in any internet space is usually worth first as much as the leader, and then eventually can become as much as the entire sector. Now, of course, this is RBI regulated, it may not happen. Nubank in Brazil is already worth more than Banco Itaú. Banco Itaú is like the HDFC of Brazil. I remember meeting the Nubank founder in Sao Paulo in 2018. He had just done his Series A. And he said the same thing. He said, I'm going to be bigger than Banco Itaú. And if you met him that time, he had just raised $10, $15 million, you would be laughing, because Brazilian banking was very oligopolistic. So how did he go about doing this? What I found over the years is great founders don't care about size of market, they care about size of problem for their customer. If you can start solving a customer's problem well, they will tell you all about the other problems, and very often, and this is the important thing yet, they are usually sitting, these opportunities are next to a very large adjacent market. So slide with college students is now becoming India's first digital bank for 370 million plus Gen Z.
Check.
Thank you. So I remember investing in Slice. They were, at that point of time, valued at about 5 million in 2017. Their last round is 1.5 billion. And I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes a $10 billion company in the next 5-10 years, right? So obviously, it took a while before all the large investors figured this out. But would I blame the VCs who came in early and said, the TAM is too small? The point is that is the wrong lens. Then we'll talk about the example of, does anybody have the clicker? Can we go to the next slide, please? The next slide. Yeah. So M2P is another company I remember meeting in 2019, actually 18. So I met Madhu. He came out of Visa and he'd been building for a few years. He wanted to launch prepaid cards for travel, fleet, and then neobanks and things like that. Again, all the VCs, market is too small, what are you doing wasting your time? But what happened was he became the best card issuing platform for neobanks. And when the neobank market opened, he was the guy. In fact, I was introduced to Madhu through the Slice founder, as well as Kodo, which was another portfolio company of mine, which is a corporate card startup. And I have never seen a company grow as fast as M2P. When we seeded them in 2020 Jan, they were doing about less than 2 million. They peaked at $80 million within 2.5 years, run rate wise. I think globally itself, only today, I think not even AI companies have grown at that pace, right? So doing one thing really, really well can crack open a very large market. Of course, RBI intervened, some rules change, all of that. But today, M2P is basically replacing Finacle in many places and is actually now providing the digital core banking system for many banks. So going from an edge case of card issuing to again providing the core banking system. And finally, the next slide, please. Easebuzz is a company, I remember meeting them in December 2020. He was a payment gateway trying to focus on small businesses in the traditional sector. Again, you would say, what kind of TAM are you chasing, right? Because remember, we're still, at that point of time, a cash-driven economy. Today, this company is the fastest growing payments company in India, highest gross profit margins, will probably IPO in 2 to 3 years at $1 billion. Will probably be my most successful fintech investment so far. And I've been fairly fortunate with the other ones that I've done. So how come Eastbuzz comes out of nowhere, right? I remember when I talked to the founder, once I told him I'm going to invest, so he opened up. He said, this is my 100th VC call. And the only reason I'm raising money is because I need to increase my net worth, right? Why am I sharing these stories with you? Do not deviate from your path, okay? If you've identified a problem, you believe in it, do not change anything for the VC. The VC is only a bridge to sustenance. The sustenance will come from the customer at the end of the day, right? So Eastbuzz was interesting for me because I came from a small town where I had a lot of friends running small businesses, and they would tell me something very interesting during COVID. They said, business is good, but we cannot collect. They said, why can't you collect digitally? He said, what is digital collection? I don't know. I don't have a QR code, right? I said, no, why can't you give a payment link? So he said, I need to digitize my billing, this, that. So when I met the founder, Rohit, what he was doing was very interesting. He would go to a sector like education. He had built a whole complex fee billing system for education. Gave it to everybody, but he was the only gateway. Then he did it for real estate. Then he did it for BFSI. Different use cases. So using software as a solution to sell in and being the sole payment gateway. That also actually gave us a very interesting insight. And I'll make a controversial point here. Please don't bother building for the world. You are living in a very large and a fairly deep economy. If we are saying Indians are not willing to pay, it's because we don't know how to build them. What is SaaS? Software as a subscription service. Correct? What are the subscription services are we using today? What do 1 billion people use? Any answers? Phones. Do we pay for it or as a subscription service? No. We are prepaid. What percentage is postpaid? 5%. What is the next thing we use? TV. How many of us are paying on a postpaid basis? Nobody, right? The only thing postpaid we are paying is what? Electricity and rent, right? So you're a 95% prepaid country, you're going to become a postpaid guy in the office. Honestly, I think we need to stop thinking about what works in US and start looking at how we are living in India. In India, pay-as-you-go model works. If Indians were so paisa vasool, then how come that poor lady in the village is buying a Unilever sachet shampoo? It's not economical, no? We like to spend where we see value, when we see value, and we don't want to let go of money for whatever reason. That is a reality. So India will always be a usage-based country. You see payments is a space. All of these companies, even you see Razorpay is probably $250 million, Cashfree is about 100, EaseBuzz is approaching 100 million. How are these guys hitting $100 million in revenue? Why are these merchants paying them that much money, right? They see value when they avail of it. So you make your software available to these people, become embedded. It should be like electricity. When I pay when I use it, right? What is the core competency of India, the comparative advantage if you really think about it? We have a large population which is largely digital. So what are you going to get? Massive volumes. So don't try to charge these people at such an early stage by saying, no, you have to pay me like the way you pay Microsoft. It's not going to work. See, it's available. Switch it on, use it. Don't want to use it, switch it off. And you will actually start to see how much money you start to make. We have another company called Transbank. We seeded them in 2023. You see their stall outside. It is right now the fastest growing fintech infrastructure company in this country. They started simply by trying to provide an escrow mechanism for banks. Today they have become the transaction banking platform for almost every bank. That's where they are going. They will upgrade every single current account in this country with transaction banking capability. But at seed, if you said, okay, start thinking, okay, what is escrow? How large is it? What's going to happen? You were never back. You want a good founder who knows how to sell, who has, as Vikram Vaidyanathan was saying, a very sharp use case. So I think, unless somebody feels otherwise, I'm a big fan of those people who go for very sharp, very niche, get into that niche, own that market. I would say that, look, your plan in 36 months should be to get to 1% of your realistic TAM. If you can get to 1%, you have figured out the playbook to 30%. 1% is very hard. There is no Ganga which will give you that, right? You have to really try to hack your way there through different ways. By the time you're at 1%, you actually hit a tipping point. And I saw that across all my companies. M2P, I remember, when their gross transaction volume hit $1 billion on all the neobank cards, the overall credit card spends in the country at that time was $100 billion. Their valuation skyrocketed by 5x. And every single large VC was chasing them. Every single. Same thing happened in Slice. Same thing happened, by the way, in EaseBuzz, which just crossed 1%, got flooded with term sheets. Same company nobody loved. So 1% is a tipping point, and that's what you want to focus on. Always remember that. Our goal as an early stage VC is to get you to 1%. We will do everything in our power to get you to that point, and you don't need a lot of money if you're a fintech infrastructure company. Of course, as a consumer play, you need a lot more capital to get there. So Broadly, what I'm trying to tell you is that there is a reason you started this company. There is a reason you had your specific insight. Don't let any investor change your mind. If a customer changes your mind, that is something very different, right? So stick to your guns. And you will find your investor. Very often, you are barking up the wrong tree. So what you want to make sure is just like, you have a product market fit with your customer, you have to have a fit with your VC as well. That is something very important. And finally, I would say build, this is where I want to sort of, I had, 15, 20 minutes, and I didn't want to give you the whole gyan on how to raise. I just want you to remember this one thing. Don't give up on your idea. It's a tough market, right? Go deep. Have your customers so grateful they will give you everything. At least that's, what we have seen through the lens of all our founders. That's it. Thank you. Do you have any questions, or unless you have the other? Sure. Great.
Thank you so much, sir. Requesting you to kindly stay back, as we would love to felicitate you as well here. So requesting Vikram sir to kindly present the memento to Vikram sir here. Let's hear it louder. Let's hear a loud applause for Vikram sir here. Thank you.